I've been bored this whole time with everything going on. I've been working on just building a little game. Nothing major. My graphics card really stinks, so you're not gonna see no pictures in here. But nonetheless, this is my awesome stuff game. And you start off as you see here in the town square, and you move up. You can trade. There's trading available, so you can trade, and there's little monsters that you can attack. You see there's a snake with 4 hit points. Like I said, it's nothing major, but it is something to pass time when I'm bored. But anyways, we go. This video is I'm going to right now. I have everything. All my items and everything I'm loading in through an XML file, and I'm gonna move my XML files to a database, which I've got over here already loaded, and I don't have a database for it yet. And that's what I'm gonna do here is start working on building a database for the system, and then converting it over. This is not a one-time video, but it's just something to do. Figured maybe somebody would get some type of entertainment out of it. So we've got a few things that we have to do before we can really get started, and that's one to make sure that we get everything gathered that we really need to be able to create our database and our tables and our columns and our elements and all the good things that we need. So we're going to start with Visio. We're just going to come up with a blank thing, and then here we'll go to more shapes, and it is software and database. We'll go to database. So we're going to use the crow's foot database notation, and it's going to give us new pictures here that we can work with. So we'll start off with an entity. Okay, so let's start with, let me go back over here. Let's start with the basic game, what it entails. And the first thing that you need is you need a character, a player, the person of the player. So this is where our first player is going to be, and you name it whatever you want. This is the table name is what I'm editing now. So table player data, and when developing a database, you need a primary key. Now this primary key is something that's not duplicated. It is a unique identifier that will be doubled over many things, and you want to use this primary key as a relationship key to other tables that you may have throughout your system. And this one, of course, we're going to start with, if I could spell, is player ID. It's going to be primary. It's also going to be an identity. And this will give us the basic relationship to the rest of the player information. And although my game doesn't have it, some things that I would of course like to implement is a way to log in, a username, a password, standard information, maybe some security questions for password reset or whatever. That's kind of beyond, just tinkering around. But we gotta have something in there, so we'll go with a standard username, and this is gonna be a varchar. We'll give all our players up to 100 values. If we decide to use it. And then here, of course, is going to be password, and we'll get into all that later. But there's also more data. There's also more data that needs to be done as well. You know, if a player loses his password, you need to have a way for him to reset it. So you want to be able to store an email address. The email address we can probably put that at about 255. Now the reason I'm using varchar versus anything else is one, if I can spell. Apparently I can't spell. Oop, caps lock's on. Alright, varchar stands for variable character, and what and that means storage wise what the variable character does is it stores 2 bytes plus the actual length of the string up to 255. So if we use 255 characters in total, it would use 257 bytes in the file. But if we only use 50, then we'd only use 52 bytes in the file, and that's why we use a varchar. I mean, even if I put it at max, which goes way on to way up there, I think it's around 32,000, something like that, or maybe that's C#. I don't remember, because I don't have to remember, because this only stores the max length of the. Ooh, I didn't put none for the password either. Let me put something for this. We'll use the varchar. We want 18 to 20. We'll put 20 in because we don't want no passwords longer than 20. Just because if we enable encryption or hash, that's going to take up a lot of space, especially in a varchar, which apparently I can't spell again. Because a hash is a lot different than a regular. It's a one-way thing, and similar to encryption, but there's only one word, only hashes one way if you're using the right hash algorithm. Now some of the older hash algorithms can be duplicated by other words, and that's why they're deprecated. So we would definitely use that when we get into the password side of things. Right now we're not, so I'm not going to fully set up the whole system. Okay, so we got some player data here. Now we need more data. As you can see here, we've got items, monsters, quests, recipes, traders, building the world. I mean, there's a lot of data here that can be stored for each person, each character, and that's what we're going to do now. So let's start with the item table. So let me drag a new entity over. Okay, and so the item table, well, let's change it to the items table, player items. And so here, I'm pretty generic. I have naming convention issues. So we're just going to name this row ID. And that's going to be the unique primary key that we're going to use. It's going to be what's known as an identity seed. So every time a new row gets added, it'll be incremented by the amount that we specify, which normally is just by 1. But we can specify different values. And these are all. This will be an int. Same with this. This will be an int too. I don't know why I put ID there. I don't remember. It's alright. So both of those are int. This one though, however, is going to be the item ID. So we need an item ID. you know what? I got I got a little mixed up here. Let me fix this. This is not the player items. I don't know why I said that. This is the game items as a whole, not the player items as is like in the backpack, a player's backpack or storage or whatever else. This is actually the all the game items that can be contained in the game. And so just like the player data, it's going to be its own entity on its own. And so we're going to give it a better naming convention on the primary key because this is going to be the item ID. So that's what we're going to call it. We're going to just call it the item ID, primary key, identity. We can use 1-1. This is tells it what number to start out at, and this tells it how much to increment it by. So if I wanted to start at 1,000, I simply put 1,000. If I wanted to increment it by 5, the first record will be 1,000. The second record will be 1,005. And that's how that works. You can specify any values in there you want. Alright, now we got an item ID. Now we need some information about the item. And if we come over here to our game, to the item factory, we've got several things that we're looking at. Alright, we've got categories. And in our categories, we determine whether it's a weapon, a healing item, or a miscellaneous item. That's just kind of where I'm at on it right now. Is these three types of items. There's no armor, nothing else. But that's okay. We don't need it right now. So we'll start with a weapon. And oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm getting a little tired. But I'm doing it anyways. Okay, so if we have a weapon, nope, it's not a weapon. Okay, so we've got a few attributes about a weapon that we need to take into consideration. Where'd it go? There it is. Alright, and a weapon can have multiple attributes, and we can look in the XML file in the game data folder, game items, and some of the things the weapons have is an item ID, a pointy name, a price, minimum damage, and maximum damage. So these are the starting out process. Sorry, I don't have two screens. I've only got a desk big enough for one. So that's what I'm using. Alright, so we've already got our item ID. Now we need a name, which I'll do as description. Then we need to know the price of it. And as you see, the ID, name, and price is the basic standard thing. So the price is going to be an integer, 15000 dot all the way down. Then, well, where'd you go? Come on. Oh, that's about the only thing that stinks about it is trying to find the attributes to be able to add another attribute. Let's go ahead and just add a couple more because I know we're going to need some. Alright. And then we got the price. Now we're going to have the min damage. We need to have max damage. Alright, and that covers the weapons. Later on, I'd like to put in a another item for the level requirements, so that as you move up, you can get better weapons, but you can't use the weapons until you get to higher levels, because you got to give the player something to work towards, right? And then one of the things you see here is in the XML files, this is a weapon, this is a healing item, and this is a miscellaneous item. Now there's an easy way to do this, and this is where we can use relationships. And so we can come in here and we can put item type as an integer and label it as a foreign key. And so we have a foreign key, and now this table may not be very big, but if you understand database systems, when you're working with big items, you'll learn about the spacing and duplicate data entries. And so we normalize the database so that it doesn't take up super much space. You can condense it down and take up as little space as possible. So simply if I had 1,500 items here, I won't have to list weapon. See, because the weapon in a varchar takes 2 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bytes. So it takes up 9 bytes. Alright, and if you take that 9 bytes and you're 1,500, 15,000, putting it instead of item type, putting the item type in a varchar here so that it actually says the weapon there, you're going to be using up a lot of space, because that is just the weapons, and I mean healing items, miscellaneous items. We had armor into it, and so we start getting into using a lot of space that doesn't need to be used. But what we can do is we can store integer in this field, and by storing an integer, we've drastically reduced it down to no matter what the length of this is, whether it's weapon, miscellaneous item, game item, doesn't matter what the text is, it'll still only take up 4 bytes in this table here. And the reason why is because, like I said, the space. And so this foreign key here is going to relate to the primary key in this table I never finished making or naming. So we're going to name it table item type, and here we can do a type ID, and of course that's the primary key, that's it. And I can go in and specify many things, whether one or not. And in here we can just simply put the item type, and that's it. And now we're taking up less space. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create the relationship, and this is where the crow's foot notation that I selected comes into play. And the reason why is because you can have one entry in here, but you can have many rows in here for this one single number. So say number 1 is the weapon, which is probably what it's going to be, but number 1 is the weapon, and so you can have the weapon assigned to many different rows, and that's what this relationship does when we bring this out. See how there's a little crow foot there at the end? It's got the three lines that represents the many, and this here represents the one. So we go from one, we come down here to the item type foreign key. So now we got one to many, and now we know what kind of item we would be having. And gotta add another, yep, gotta add one more item to the, what is that, the game item table. And it's of course not hard, so we do that here, and we say I'll call it healing power without caps lock on, and we'll provide that as integer because we'll be using the integer value. We won't be using partials or anything of that nature, and that's going to start our three tables. The other XML file that I have is so far as the locations, so we could do that tomorrow after church sometime. But for right now, we're just going to focus on doing this. So we got a few tables to get us through right now to create. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to create a database. We don't have any database created for the game yet. And I'm just going to name it after what I got my game named. And my awesome stuff is what I'll name it. That way it relates to the game name here, my awesome stuff. Alright. So we'll come over here to SQL query. We'll make sure that we're in the master database. We're going to create a table. Nope, my bad, I spoke wrong. Create a database. And the database name is going to be my DB, my awesome stuff. And apparently I can't spell. There, of course, is a lot more that goes into creating a database, and it's based off of the settings you have in the master, unless you specify otherwise. In this environment, I don't have to specify anything other. I could take my default settings that I use, or my default configuration I've got, and I could just create the database. But I'm going to show you what other items can be done with creating a database. Now, I ain't trying to teach you how to do a database, but I am going to show you a little bit of it. Okay, so let's refresh it. So we got it all good. Alright, now we'll take the database we just created. We can go to script database as, create to, new query window. And there we go. So this is the only line that I put in. But this is all the things that the server had to do in order to get this thing. And one of the main things here is specifying the name of the database, the location that you want the database, the initial size of the database. You can specify, let's go back. You can specify the maximum size of it, like this here. You can specify the maximum size of it. And then also you can specify the growth rate, because as you add data to it, the total data it takes grows, and so it reserves space, and you don't want it to grow way faster than it's actually really growing, because you're going to reserve all this space for the database that isn't being utilized, and it's not going to let nothing else take that space because it's reserved for your database. So that's where that comes to be important on your database side of things. And then this is the log file. This captures everything to do with your database, all the queries, logins, it's everything that happens to it. And you can specify the location, and just like the database, the initial size, the maximum size, and how big it grows. Now the reason why this is unlimited by default compared to this one is because when you fill up a log file, it's going to create a second log file. It'll create the same log file name, except for it'll start adding numbers to the end of it for each log file. And that's by default. And log files, as you can see, will take up a lot of space. But just in case you didn't know, this is the basic stuff to create the database. All this other stuff below it, these are different settings, within the database. ANSI nulls, you can turn those on. Padding, ANSI warnings. You can turn the auto shrink, so when you delete something, it shrinks back down. The automatic update statistics. I mean, and it just goes on and on and on with basic things, and some advanced things too, but we're not worried about that. That's why we just did the single little query to create the database. But moving along, now that we have the database created, we can actually start creating some tables because we've come over here and we've defined some of them. So let's start with the player data table. Alright, and to initialize the table player data, we just similar to this right here, we can create table player data, put the whatever those are called, my brain just went poof, gone. But anyways, alright, so we're going to start off with player ID. This is going to be an integer primary key. It's also going to be an identity, and like I said, I start with 1-1. I'm not real picky on this. There's other options too, but they take up way more space. GUID, as most people pronounce it, is a really long key. It takes up a lot of space and does have its uses, but it's just not here where we're at right now. And then we're going to go with the username, and we said that this was going to be a varchar 100, and then we're going to go with the password, which we said we're going to do a varchar 20 because we don't want over 20 characters. Passwords are reserved words. See how it's in blue? And anytime you come across anything like that, it's really recommended to change. But if you really don't want to change it, you can enclose it in brackets. And as you see, it kind of goes away, so it's whatever. In a work environment, it's a little different, but I'm in a play environment. I'll never expect this to be an actual work environment per se, so I'm not too worried about it. Alright, and there's basic player information, user information. Alright, and then we can come over here and we can create more tables. We can do table game item. Create table. Man, I'm just having a hard time typing tonight, I guess. With fat fingering everything, it seems like. In here, we'll do a description. It's going to be a varchar. We'll start off with 50 because we're the ones specifying it, not the user. There's another one of those reserved words. Alright, and we got a price, which is going to be an integer. We can also set a default for the value, so anytime it's created, it's going to automatically, whether we specify a value for it or not, it'll always go to the default. And that's great, because then that keeps from having null values when you really don't need a null value. Alright, minimum damage. Oh, yep. There we go. Forgot to specify integer. Max damage. It's going to be integer. Default 0. We're going to have an item type. Integer foreign key, which we'll get to that in a minute. But anyways, foreign. No, that's not how you spell foreign. Foreign. Yeah, foreign key. References. Table. Item. Type. And then in the brackets we put the actual field. Type ID. It's not created, so you're going to see the squiggly line here, but don't worry about that. We'll get that. And then we got the healing power. And it's going to be integer. Okay, so we could specify a value here or not. I think I'm going to go ahead and specify it. Okay. So back up to this problem here. The reason why it's highlighted in the squiggly line red is because it's basically saying, hey, that table don't exist. How can I reference a table that doesn't exist? So you got the order operations that you got to kind of think of, and that's why we go between them. And we're going to do the item type here, if I can remember how to type here. There we go. And here we're just going to do the type ID, int, primary key, identity, and we'll just do 112. Alright, see now that I specified this here, you see how this went away, the red squiggly, because now it's saying, oh, well, because it's going to be created before, this will be created before it creates this one. So it's saying, okay, as long as it's created before, I'll take it. But if I take this, I put it down here, it'll come back. And that's truly what, oops, we needed a item type, varchar 20. Okay. Oops, forgot my comma. Alright, now we're good to go. So I'll move this back up here. I'll delete this. Use. And a lot of times you could change it in two places. So we go back to master. We can leave it on master, but here we can put the name of the database we're going to be working in and type go. What it's going to do is it's going to change this here, and then it's going to run the rest of it. It's going to split it up into two separate batches. So we press F5, everything's completed. So we come over here, let's refresh. Now you see the database We'll go to the tables, and now we see we got game items, item type, and player data. Those are the three that we just created. And I want to show you the same thing with these tables as I did with the database. Is, you know, there's what I typed. This does not match exactly what I typed, and it's just how it is. But so we come down here and we look and we see that after it created the table, it still came back and said, okay, well now that it's created, we're going to go ahead and set the default values for each one that was specified. And then on the last one was a foreign key, and it did the exact same thing. But it's doing them all at one at a time. See, they're individual batches. So as long as they're individual batches, they're not going to have too many problems. Okay, so now we got the tables loaded in. We got to load in data, because data's no, we don't want, that's the wrong one. Cancel out of that. Let's see what tools we have for us. No, oh, there we go. Import, export data. And it's going to search for a data source. But we don't. Flat file source. Alright, now we can select our file name. We'll come over here to our desktop, go to projects, and then in our there we go. This isn't going to work out for me too well, is it? It doesn't like to parse the data in an XML. I mean, shipping out in an XML isn't hard at all. That's okay. Yeah, it ain't a big problem. I don't really have a SSI package or ETL package, not SS, but the ETL package. That's extract, transform, and load. That you take data and you can transform it any way you want. But we're not going to worry about that right now. What we're going to do is let's come over here to our other XML file. And we'll just do it this way. Alright. First, to do an insert statement, we got to insert into and then the table name. So table and we'll start with the table game items. We're going to insert the description, price, min damage, max damage, item type, integer, and the healing power. I don't know why I specified integer. Alright. So there's a couple ways that we can do this. Oh, insert. And the best way to do this insert is to use a select statement. Well, let's start off with the basic one. Values. Excuse me. Well, this is basic insert statement. There's values, and then of course you match up the values. Description. Why grab that, and they use just a single asterisk. And so on and so forth. But if we do it that way, we won't get the item type, the relationship between the item type and the foreign key if we do it this way, because this way won't actually I cannot specify exactly what that item type ID is, because I won't always know. If I'm inserting a new game item, I don't know what the value might be here. Hypothetically, I mean, right now it's going to be 1, 2, or 3, but hypothetically, if you had 10, 15, 20,000 different objects, how do you know which one is which? What the next, without actually going in there and saying, okay, well, which one's next? Where are you currently at? So I can specify the next one. You know, this is an identity. It just adds whatever you told it to add. So let it do its job. That's what you're there for, right? So and I'll just delete this because it's useless. There's also the merge statement. What a merge statement does, it says, hey, if this exists, then you can update it. But if it doesn't exist, then you can insert it. But that still kind of, does an insert statement, and really isn't for our needs at this point in time. So what we need to do is we need to insert weapon, healing items, and miscellaneous items. So we'll start with a table item. So we're just going to insert into table item type, and the only thing we got to do is insert the item type. I don't have to insert nothing else, and values, because I know what values are going in. There's no need for anything else. Now, because we have 3 items that we need to insert, we don't have to do this one by one by one. We can simply separate it by a comma, and then just do another left not bracket, but parenthesis. I guess I can't remember. It's really tired. We can do healing item, and then lastly we can do the miscellaneous item, which I'll just call it miscellaneous. And there we go. So now I could just insert that. Oh, and just simply by highlighting it, I could run just the code that I highlight. If I didn't highlight it, it would run this, and then when it reached this, it would of course fail, because that's no type of SQL code. But moving back to what we were doing earlier, we could do this two ways. Like I said, we can go, I love the undo button. There we go. I love the undo button because it just does really well. Alright, so we're going to insert the pointy stick. And then we're going to insert the name, or the price, which in this case is 1. And since it's an integer, I don't have to put nothing around it. Minimum damage is 1, and the maximum damage is 2. Alright. And here we've got an item type, which is located in this other table that relates to this. This value is this value here. So, and since we don't know that value, we can't specify it. We actually going to do something a little different. We're going to use a select statement to select that specific one and return the value that matches it. So if we select the type ID from table item type, where item type is equal to weapon. Well, I didn't get that whole thing, did I? And then got, okay, and it'll automatically put that there. But since I specified heal power in here, I have to provide a value for it. If I didn't include it in this section here, I'll just show you. Okay, so we'll start off and I'll insert this twice. Okay, so we'll insert, goes through heal power. What did I? Oh. Healing power. There we go. Okay, so if we go in here and we select all the values here, you see that I just inserted the pointy stick, price 1, 1, maximum, the item type is 1. I'll show you that in a minute, and the healing power is 0. But if we took this and this out, you will still get the same exact values. And so if we look at it here, now you have two completely duplicate, and that's what the default value does. So by not including the healing power, it's still defaulted to 0. And that's why we set the default on them. Because if it's a healing item, it's not going to have no damage. And if it's a weapon or an item, it's not going to have no healing power. And we'll add other things later. This is a rough draft, not the final version. Just remember that. But we don't need two items of the same. That's redundant data that's unnecessary, that we don't need. So what I'm going to do to change that is I'm going to do a delete table game items. And I'm going to specify what to delete, where. As you see, did I not specify a primary, a primary key? Did I leave that out? You know what, I sure did. So let's add that in real quick. That'd be good. A good thing to show you, and that starts off with alter table, similar to what I showed you earlier when I scripted the table out. We're going to alter the table game items, and we're going to add item ID, primary key, identity, 1. Yeah. Oh. That might help. There we go. Okay, so let's try this again. Alright, so now they have the item ID. See how it incremented 1 and 2. And so we're gonna delete where the item ID is equal to 2. Okay, and now if we go back in and look, we of course see that there's only 1 in here now. But nonetheless, it's done, and we can remove that 1 from the list. And just like I told you earlier, we could specify more. So simply just doing, we got sword, price, oops, and these are all the weapons. That's the rusty sword. That's the snake fang. That's the rat claw. And that's the spider fang. And I'll delete the rest. Okay, so the price we have 5000. So 5000. Minimum damage is 1000. So minimum damage is 1, 2, 3. And we've got 1, 2, 3. So we got somehow we got mixed up here. So we got 1. Yeah, I'm getting confused. Anyways, it's hard to track sometimes. We'll just do the rusty store. Price 5, minimum damage is 1, maximum damage is 3. It is a weapon, so that one's good. Snake fang, price is 0, minimum damage is 0, and the maximum damage is 2. It's a weapon, that's right. The rat claw, 0, 0, and 2. And then last, the spider fang is 004. Alright, we'll go ahead and insert those in there. Let's remove this. Let's double check it. Just to double check it, make sure that they all took, and that'd be 5 total, which would be 6 because it didn't reuse. We have already used the 2. Even if we deleted it, it still was used in the counter for the identity seed said, hey, we're at 2, so it inserted 3 and counted up from there. That's what the identity seed does with it. Alright, anyways, we're going to go with a healing item. We got to go with a name. And then the price is 5. The price is 5, and that's it. So it doesn't have a minimum or maximum damage. Here we need to add the healing power, because this is a healer and it heals for 2 points. So we'll add 2 here. We'll add back in the healing power. And stay on that side of the comma, and that'll go right on in. No problem, done and done. And if you wanted to double check, there we go. You see no damage and 2 healing power. Alright, now we got to do the miscellaneous items, which I just called it miscellaneous. Which isn't going to have no healing power. All it has is ID, name, and price. So that's 0, comma 0, comma 0, and comma 0. One, two, 1, and then it's not going to have max damage, so we can remove the maximum damage out of there too, because it's not a weapon. How many do we have? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 listed. 2, 3, 4, so I need 2, 3, 4, 5 more. Okay. 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1. One, two. Alright. And then we'll change the price or the names of them all. Oats, honey, raisins. And snake fang. Oh, it's already there. Snake skin. Rat tail. Rat fur. Spider fang. It's already there. And then we'll do spider silk. Okay. Alright. Okay, all those were entered. Let's check. Okay, so there we go. Oop. Didn't catch that error there. So instead of deleting that one to fix it, we'll do a quick update statement to fix that. So we're going to update the table, game items, and we're going to set description equal to spider silk, where, go back, alright, where the item ID, we could do it from that or from that, but this is just more secure and ensures that we get the right one. Okay. There we go. We'll check it. Okay. See, now it's fixed. The value of it's fixed. Because if we delete it, then that's going to throw off our item ID. So only delete from the database when there's absolutely no other choice. Normally you don't want to delete anyways. I just throw everything into an audit table. That way we know what's going on. But because I made a mistake earlier and showed you how to alter table and add column and all that stuff, one of the things that we need is we need character data. We got a player ID and some values, but we need some values about a character. I mean, what's the game without a character? Any type of character, right? So in this one, we're going to do the character ID, integer, primary key, and then of course we need to know who owns it, who owns this character, and that's going to be the player. So the player ID. Alright, and each player is going to have values. If we go into the game, we look at the game, like any other RPG type game, you're going to have items, you're going to have levels. See, you got a name, you got a class, current hit points, gold, current experience, level. You got all these items that can be stored here in the character field. That way it specifies the character attributes. So we can go with the name, we add some attributes here because we're going to need a few of them. Visio will just extend out as much as you need it to be. So we got the name. Class is going to be a foreign key, an integer, a number, foreign key as well, because you're going to have same scenario here where you're going to have multiple classes that a player could be, but that's also going to relate to the amount of, to many of them. So if you had 15,000 players, of course you don't want to write the same thing over and over and over again 15,000 times. So that's why we'll create this one. The other one is the hit points, which will be managed by the game. Current gold. We'll do the current XP. And here we can do the current level. And these we'll get all this at another point. Okay. And then we also have an inventory. And the inventory here is what determines, what you actually have in your inventory. So we're going to need some way to track that inventory, right? So we'll go into insert attribute after, and we'll do the inventory. And of course this is also going to be a table because one player is not bound to one item or 5 items. They can have essentially as many as the programmer allows them to have, 1,000, And so you don't want to create 1,000 different columns as item 1 and item 2 and item 3, whatever, blah, 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 blah. You don't want to do it that way because a lot of these items are stacked. As you see, they're stacked. But anyways, we're going to do another foreign key for an inventory table. Alright, and as we see, we got quests. Now if I go up north to the herbalist hut, I get a quest to clear the herb garden. So we're also going to need another table for quests, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. And I haven't decided yet on how to do the recipes quite yet. And we'll figure that out later. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the character table. Oh, we can't because we got 2 foreign keys here. We got a class foreign key and an inventory foreign key. So let's check out our inventory. Let's just go ahead and look at this. Alright, now our inventory it's grouped, so you could carry with things like the granola bar. I can carry 2, but I can only carry 1 pointy stick, 1 weapon at a time, and I'll show you if I come here and I buy a second weapon. You see now it shows separately that I have 2 pointy sticks in my inventory, but it's grouped differently than my granola bar, and that's because these are non-stackable items. And I made that stackable, and I made this non-stackable. And that's the difference. But in the database, we want a list. We want the program to manage the stacking of it. We want the inventory to determine, what that is. So we're going to create another table here. And this is going to be player inventory. Oh, okay, so it's a little after 11. It's getting late. Let me finish this table up here, and then I'm going to call it a night, and we'll pick up with it tomorrow. So with a player inventory, we're going to need several things here. First, we need an individual ID for each row. I'll explain that later, but we need to make sure that we got to be able to call it by several different characteristics. The first is going to be the individual row. We want to also we're going to need to be able to call it by the player ID, and that's why when the person logs in, they can get all their items and continue where they left off last time. And then all the items themselves are not in this table, so they're going to be in the game items table. And because they're in the game items table, guess what? That's another foreign key that will have to relate to the primary key of the game items. So we'll start off with the row ID as an integer primary key, and then we'll come down here and we'll start off with the player ID, and this is an integer foreign key. And then we need a game item ID. So game item ID, that's the integer, and that's also a foreign key. And we can pull all the descriptions, we can pull all the information from that based off of this key here. So that's not going to be a problem whatsoever. Ooh, got something in my eye. Hope it's an eyelash. Alright, that's better. Okay. And what else did we need? We got the row ID, individual, we got the player, we got the game ID. And of course my mind just wants to go blank right now. So I'm gonna leave that like that for now. I think it's just getting too late for me. So we want, oops, like I said earlier, this is going to be to many because a game character can have more than one item. So we take and we set it up that we've got one to many. And I think in here it has a way to specify, yeah, you can specify one to many. And I think that's it. I think that's enough for tonight. And we'll call it a night. But alright. Well, if you're bored tomorrow and you just kind of want to watch me diddle around and talk to myself for a while, then feel free to join in. Alright. Have a good night.